to Behind the Story. I'm Naomi Craig. Happy 2024. You might notice it's just me tonight, and Lisa and I have got worked some new things up for this season. I will be focusing on the historical interviews, and Lisa will be focusing on the contemporary. Welcome to Behind the Story. I write biblical fiction. I'm also the host of Biblical Fiction Aficionados. I'm also excited to get into this interview with Kristena Mears. Our guest today is indie turned traditional author. Kristena writes Broken People Finding Grace, Redemption, and Love. Kristena, welcome to Behind the Story.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here with you, Naomi. I'm honored.
So for those who aren't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about you and what you write.
Oh, okay. Well, I have been married for 41 years to my best friend. Almost 42 here coming up. He is a pastor, retired, if pastors ever retire. We have been ministering together before we even got married. He was a youth pastor before we started dating, and has been in the ministry since then. We have 3 grown children, and we've released them into the world. Now have 4 grandchildren and 3 cats and a slew of fish.
That's awesome. My husband is a pastor as well. We're currently serving in Arizona. So I've been there. I am there. So your debut book, Under Penalty of Death, it comes out on January 29th.
29.
And excited to see it. It's a lovely cover. The back blurb goes like this: Will running set them free or sentence them to death? Keturah idolizes her brother Justice. He stood his ground with Abba, declaring Yeshua Messiah, resulting in Keturah's desire to know more about Yeshua and Abba proclaiming Justice dead to the family. So what's the story behind Under Penalty of Death?
Well, Keturah is a young girl, just became a woman, and she lives in a Jewish family, a Jewish community, surrounded with, well, basically there's no Christians in her small town. Justice was removed from the family. His father declared him dead, and he hasn't been around, but he has been sneaking back in order to let Keturah know about Christ, and meeting secretly with his mother and brothers and sisters. She did accept Christ, but she knows basically nothing about being a Christian. So she's trying her best and makes most of her decisions focused on what she wants and what she think God wants her to do, which is not always the correct thing. She has heard from her brother that that Paul has said you shouldn't be unequally yoked. And so when she is betrothed, when she became a woman, her father set the betrothal and chose someone that she actually really likes, but she wants to follow Christ. So she decides she needs to take matters into her own hands, and
Always
she
a good
runs
plan.
away. It's always a good plan, yes. She runs away, and in order to run away, she needs some cash, so she steals the dowry, or part of the dowry that's actually goes to her once she is married, but she shouldn't be taking it. And she tries to find her brother, who is working with Paul. So that's where the story begins. Basically, she's a very independent young girl who lies and manipulates and tries to do what's right, but always fails.
I understand that. I understand that. Yeah, it was definitely
She's
relatable.
me.
Yeah. Have you been following me? Now, Yeah, it was definitely relatable to I read a copy a while back actually, but it was definitely relatable on her just plowing ahead and ready to do what was what she felt was the right thing
Mhm.
and flopping. So, what are some of Katura's strengths and weaknesses beyond the doing her own thing?
Her weaknesses are really her desire, well, her strengths are her desire to follow Christ. Her
Okay.
weakness is relying on her own strength and not knowing what God wants her to do.
Yeah.
Um, she is she's manipulative, she's controlling, she's oh, not wanting to give her life to Christ because she thinks then she's going to have to admit that she's doing wrong and
Oh,
go
sure.
back, and if she admits what she did and she is returned to home, she could be stoned, because the only reason for leaving once you're betrothed is usually adultery.
Mm.
And plus she stole all um, that money and jewels, and she knows the consequences are probably death.
Hence the name, under
Yeah,
penalty of death.
exactly.
Wow. So you've gotten some stellar endorsements, including Mesu Andrews, who writes an emotional, spellbinding glimpse into the heart of a first century Jewish woman forced to choose between the desire to get her own way and her commitment to Jesus, the risen Messiah. Mears masterfully uses in-depth research and believable fiction, emphasizing the biblical account of Christians in the early church. This book kept me turning page after fascinating page. Now, if you watch this show and you've been around biblical fiction, you know Mesu Andrews is that's high praise coming from Mesu Andrews. So congratulations on that. So how did you get Mesu on board with Under Penalty of Death?
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is high praise. And I was very actually flabbergasted that she gave me such a wonderful endorsement. We just basically, oh, like we all do, like each other's posts on Facebook
Right.
and Twitter and or X or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
Um, and especially on Twitter, we would share each other's when they had books coming out, or if there was a sale on something, I would repost and she would repost. And um, one day, basically, I went to a writers conference, which I would say every writer needs to go to writers conferences. That's where you learn and really improve. And one of the challenge was just basically um, don't think you're not good enough to ask people.
Mm.
And so I sent out many different queries on, will you endorse my book? And I sent along the first, I think it was the first 2 or 3 chapters. And Misu got back to me and she said, I love it. Will you send me some more? So I
Wow.
sent her a little more, and she, or quite a bit more. And she came back with that just lovely endorsement. And I am so pleased that she did enjoy it and she endorsed my book.
Yeah,
She's such a
that's nice.
special lady. She
She's
really,
very special.
yes.
I really she's a dear friend and
Mhm.
also my hero as literary hero as that's what I
Right.
want to write like
Yeah,
when I grow up.
we've communicated back and forth, and she's mentored me a few times now that I went out of my little safety box and stuck my foot out there. You'd be surprised how much um
Yeah. She's real
people
sweet.
really will respond. And
Yeah, for sure. So, this is rather a unique biblical fiction. It is New Testament,
Mhm.
but we're not seeing like the disciples or Acts or the more popular or well known, I guess, stories in the Old New Testament. So what Bible figures do we get to know in this book?
Actually, there's quite a few Bible pictures or people that we get to know. It does revolve around the book of Philemon um, and Paul's imprisonment. So it's definitely centered right in the middle of everything going on in Acts. Um, Justice, in fact, is even mentioned by Paul, which I do have in the introductory verse on the first chapter. He's Jesus who is called Justice. And Paul introduces him and sends greetings from him to the church in Colossia. So we have Justice and that Keturah's sister, or Keturah is his sister.
Right, right.
And then we have Paul, and they met in Jerusalem when Paul was in Jerusalem. Justice from the writings of Paul himself, he mentions how Justice worked with him. There's Onesimus, who is staying with Paul in Rome, and Tychius, who is also with Paul in Rome. Timothy and is there. And so there's two or three chapters that revolve around them in Rome. Onesimus is the story of a slave who ran away and stole his master's possessions, went to Rome, and was saved by Paul. And so Keturah and his story are parallel. And so they're both going through whether they should go back and admit what they've done and make it right. And
Mhm.
so during the story, um, Tychius, Onesimus, Justice, Keturah, and two other characters are on this journey going back to Colossae. They're taking the letter that Paul wrote the to the Ephesians, to Colossae, and to Laodicea. And there are other churches that they stop at along the way that Paul has also written a letter to. But we don't have those letters in our New Testament. So we don't know actually whether they really existed or whether that's just my fictional story, knowing that Paul did write other letters. So
Yeah,
yes, that. And then there's Philemon,
right.
who Paul wrote the book of Philemon to,
About
which,
Onesimus. Yeah.
yeah, and in my research, I found out some really interesting things. There's actually a Marcus Centurius Philemon who is buried in Hier Hierapolis, which is a triangle city. You have Laodicea, Hierapolis, and Colossia, all kind of in this real triangle and going down. And so um, he is actually named on a memorial that you can
Oh,
still
fun.
go and see now, as a major landholder and Christian saint. And
Wow.
so it's really interesting. We don't know for sure that that's the same Philemon, but
This is
I'm not
fiction,
worried.
so
Yeah,
you
I
are
really
welcome
think
to
it
go
is.
there. Well, I love it. That's wonderful. So, I know personally when I'm reading the letters in the New Testament, it's easy to take it as this is spiritual guidance for me and how I can shape my Christian life. But to think of them as real people, I haven't. It's neat to see that. So if you're watching, I'd love for you to comment below. This is how you will be entered in to win a copy of Under Penalty of Death for U.S. addresses for an ebook. Comment below and tell us which obscure New Testament person you would like to see a story about. And then that will get you entered into the drawing for, and tell us where you're from. That'll get you into the drawing for Under Penalty of Death ebook. So Christina, your publishing journey is a bit unusual. So tell me how you went from being independently published to traditionally published with the same book.
Yeah, that actually really surprised me. I was told that that couldn't happen. And actually was one reason why I didn't self-publish when it had been ready for a while, because I wanted to be traditionally published. Um, and my husband encouraged me to just go ahead and self-publish. Again, when I went to a writers' conference, I met Deb from Elk Lake Publishing, and she wanted to read part of my story. She read it and said, "Hey, I'd like to give you a contract for the series." So um, that's how it happened, and I was just really
Amazing.
surprised. Very, but again, those conferences, you've got to go to those writing
Yeah,
conferences.
yeah, for sure. That's great. I love it. So what was it that got you sparked into writing biblical fiction?
Hmm. That is a very interesting story. As I said, I'm Keturah. I wanted so badly to live for Christ. I was a Christian, but I always failed. I love to read. I um, so I read a lot of Christian fiction, and it always seemed like in Christian fiction, if there was a person who was the bad guy, the one that what couldn't get their act together. They were not a Christian, and then the story was about them becoming a Christian, and then when they became a Christian, they all of a sudden pretty much made all the right choices. And I knew that wasn't me, and it frustrated me so much. I wanted to be that person. And so finally, a friend of mine actually just challenged me um, to do NaNoWriMo with him. And I said, I don't have a story really. I mean, I had this kind of story in my back of my mind about a girl who ran away. And it was set in a biblical fiction time. When I had kind of developed it, I had um, read Francine Rivers, the
Hmm.
Lion series, Mark of the Lion. And so I loved it. I loved, seeing the biblical people come alive. And so that's what I wanted. I thought, okay, that's genre I really like to do. So basically it was just a culmination of taking the era that I loved and the person that I knew always failed and putting them in a story. I
Hmm.
didn't think it would fly. And I have gotten a lot of criticism for it. There's been some people that have said, she's a bad person. I don't even like her um, at the beginning.
I
But
don't like myself so a lot of the time. So.
exactly. Yeah, so often if people knew the real us inside,
Hmm.
they may not like us either.
Hmm.
And I wanted to convey that because I know that there's other people out there like me who fail over and over again, and we're never going to get it right. It's not
Right.
going to happen as long as we're
But for
here on
God's
earth.
grace. Yeah.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. Wow. Love that. So what would you want to people to come away with as they're reading Under Penalty of Death?
I want them to come away with the fact that God loves them and they are redeemed through his grace, not through their works, um, not through something that, with all their failings, again, we all try to put, we always try to help God out, he needs a little help over here to get it the way that it's supposed to be.
Right?
Or, or
Also a good choice.
Yeah, and or so we go off and do our own thing and think we're doing it for Christ, but we're doing it for ourselves. And
Mhm.
so I want people to know that that's normal. It's not something that, you don't have your wonderful Christians here at church that you see all smiling all the time and they go home and they have that facade, or they have that life that they live perfectly within God's will at home. And
Right.
so they too are loved and forgiven and redeemed.
Love it. All right. Very serious question. You just won a lifetime supply of the last thing you bought. What is it?
Oh, that makes me laugh. Uh, the last thing I bought, and I don't know if this counts, but it was medication. So I
Well,
have
this is good.
a lifetime supply of medication. I don't have to worry about those high prices anymore.
I like it. I like it. That's pretty smart. All I get is painter's tape. So there's that. It's too bad I stopped at Walmart because I had coffee with a friend today. That would have been even better.
Oh, that would have been wonderful.
That would have been wonderful. Well, tell us what's next. What's coming out next for you?
Oh, if you would have asked me even last week, I would have said it is I'm writing a story, the sequel that is there's a toddler that's in the book,
Hmm.
and it's her story as she's grown up. But as I'm writing that, it seems like I'm intertwining two or three different storylines that don't really mesh together. So I might be writing a middle book in between that, the same series.
Yeah.
So I can't really tell you right now whether I'm writing the second book or the third book.
Okay. Well,
I'm
be
writing
sure.
one of them.
Where's the best place readers can find you online so they can know all of whether it's book two or book three?
My website is KristinaMears.com. All of my Facebook, social media. Just got on TikTok. I'm a brand new person. And it's all Kristena Mears,
Okay,
or author
excellent.
Kristena Mears. You just have to spell my name right, it is very different. Kristena. Um,
Okay.
then
And
as
we
long
will
as
have that linked in the show notes below so that you know how to spell it correctly. Just click on it and you'll go right over there. But thank you so much for sharing with us today on Behind the Story.
thank you. This is wonderful. I really enjoyed myself.
Remember to connect with Christina and learn more about her books. She is offering an ebook of Under Penalty of Death for US readers. Be sure to comment in the comments below about that obscure New Testament character that you'd love to see a book about. And who knows, you might actually see a book about this person. Um, so thank you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Behind the Story if you love getting updates about great historical and contemporary books and authors and publishing advice as well. And until next time, let us run with endurance the race set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Thanks for joining.